these were all my medications I was on.
Oh my.
Most of these were for depression, anxiety, and then later I was diagnosed with insomnia as well. And those pills, they did almost nothing for me. But doing carnivore, it was a couple weeks into it where I was like, something's happening here. I'm starting to see this depression, and the horrible anxiety I had started to lift. Our documentary, the name is Healing Humanity, The Power of a Proper Human Diet, which is kind of a big name. Well, how are you going to heal humanity? But there's several plays on words there. But the main takeaway that we've had from this is, how do you heal humanity? It's such a big ask. It's really not. It's just you as an individual, each person just has to heal themselves. You do that, you inspire other people, and it'll spread and it'll change. And that's my big advice, is just focus. That's the advice I give my children as well. There's so much going on in the world. There's so many distractions. There's political causes. There's news. There's social media. But I'm like, just focus on being the best person you can be, the best human you can be.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for tuning in today. Today, I have a special guest that I've been really looking forward to speaking with, Kerry Mann. He's the creator of HomeSteadHow and the inspiring documentary Healing Humanity, The Power of a Proper Human Diet. He said that movie will be ready in about a year, but he's been interviewing people about the carnivore diet. And I've been on the carnivore diet for about 7 years, so I'm very interested in how it's coming and how many people are paying attention. And I really wanted to talk to him because he's following people and he has some anecdotal stories to share. He talks about his family. He talks about his health and how many things have been rectified in his health. So you can listen to that. He had congestive heart failure, 37 years old. That was reversed on this diet. Depression, anxiety, many other things. So if you're interested, and you should be, because we need to be advocating for ourselves in terms of our health. Depending on pharmaceuticals is getting very expensive, and it's risky, and it's very risky. This is not very risky. It's a pretty safe way of dealing with health. So I hope that you enjoy this conversation as much as I did. And thank you again. Kerry Mann, welcome to my podcast. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here.
Well, I think it's about time that we had a conversation. I've been watching you, I don't know, not for that long, probably 6 months or so. I've seen a lot of action happening, a lot of action. So I thought I better get you on here and we could have a discussion. So first of all, you live on a homestead. You live on a homestead with a wife and family. How has your lifestyle, how did that impact you in the changes that you've made, the transformations that have come about?
Yeah, well, living on a homestead is a lot of work. And prior to finding carnivore diet and changing my life, I was pretty weak and tired all of the time. So I'm able to get a lot more done on the homestead now. But it's wonderful having our own chickens and farm fresh eggs and things like that. So that's been a big blessing.
So how tired were you?
I was diagnosed several years ago with congestive heart failure, and I could barely stand up.
How old were you?
I was 37. I was sitting at home.
That shouldn't happen. Is that something that runs in your family, or did it just happen to you?
No, it just happened to me. I was sitting at home and I went to stand up and my face was numb and I started getting confused and dizzy, and my wife called 911 and I had a mini stroke, a TIA mini stroke.
Oh, yeah.
So I ended up in the hospital for about 5 days and they did a bunch of subsequent tests and they said, you have congestive heart failure. And I've had an irregular heartbeat since birth, but it never affected my energy or things like that. It was just an irregular heartbeat. I didn't have any AFibs, but it was definitely a shocker when I was told you have congestive heart failure.
I bet. So what did you think when you got out of the hospital? What am I going to do? You must have thought, what am I going to do? How am I going to take care of this?
At that point, Tammy, I was so hopeless. I had so many health issues. The congestive heart failure was one of many. I was diagnosed with IBS. I had sleep apnea. I was using a CPAP machine for years throughout all of my 30s. I had my appendix burst on the operating room table. I had my gallbladder removed because I had IBS. I always had these stomach issues and stomach pain. I had multiple kidney stones, skin cancer on my ear. The biggest thing for me was depression and anxiety. I suffered from horrible suicidal depression for most of my adult life. I was on all sorts of pills, and it all kind of came together with the congestive heart failure. That was sort of more near the end of it all. But it was very scary, especially the way they phrase it, heart failure. It's like, I'm going to die. I guess it's just, and they told me it was chronic. Congestive heart failure is chronic. And they said, Kerry, you might be able to keep it the same, but it's never going to improve. If anything, it's just going to get worse. So it's kind of an issue I'd have for the rest of my life. And it really bothered me because, like, one of the things I noticed is my wife and I go to church every Sunday. And every time we'd stand up in church to sing, I would get so dizzy. And I had like a new procedure. I'd kind of hold my wife and I'd make sure like I wouldn't fall over.
Oh, dear.
So it's kind of interesting after I found carnivore and started doing a proper human diet, I started noticing that go away. I'm like, whoa, I'm not dizzy or fatigued when I stand up anymore.
I remember when my daughter, she was also sick, right? And it all culminated when she was 17 and had her ankle and her hip replaced. And she always said that the depression was worse, that she would rather have the arthritis than the depression, because depression, it colors your whole life. It colors your days, your nights, your relationships, everything. And we had no
Yes.
idea that it would lift her depression. We had no idea. And that took a lot longer. So did you find that some of your symptoms got better faster and then others took much longer?
Yes, I did. For me, I think I'm particularly blessed or lucky. A lot of things happened for me quickly after I started carnivore. One of the first things that happened, and I've heard your husband speak about this too, was I stopped snoring nearly instantly.
Oh, yeah.
And I was
I
on a
noticed
CPAP
that.
machine. Yeah. I had to strap this mask to my face every night. I hated that machine so much. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't turn over. And that stopped almost right away. That was all I learned. That was all inflammation. And my whole life, I went to multiple sleep studies. I was always told, listen, guy, you're way overweight. You need to lose about 80 pounds and then you'll stop snoring. So it was kind of hopeless. I was trying dieting and everything like that, but I didn't lose a pound and I stopped snoring. And I've heard so many other people say that same thing. So that
Yeah, my
happened pretty
husband, I
quickly.
don't think he had lost very much weight before he stopped snoring too. He stopped snoring pretty quickly, and he was always told too that it was a function of weight, and he wasn't, he lost 50 pounds, right? So he wasn't that overweight, but turns out that it isn't about the weight. Not
Right.
exactly. I'm sure the weight doesn't help, but it's not exactly about the weight. It's inflammation.
Right. And that inflammation is a huge problem for so many people that I think people need to learn more about that. Just, like snoring, it sounds like an inconvenience, but there's so many downstream effects from that snoring. I had a weakened immune system, and I really believe that played into the depression I had because when my sleep started to improve, I noticed my depression improving. It was visibly noticeable. And like you were saying with Michaela and her depression, anxiety, it was the worst thing in the world for me. It was just such a dark place for so long. And my biggest regret with that was my children seeing their dad go through this. And I'm not one. The thing is, like, it affects me. It's like, okay, I'm a man. I can kind of take care of this and I can just deal with it. But I can't fake that in front of my kids. So they knew, what's wrong with dad? Why is dad sad? Why is dad mad? Why is dad a zombie on the couch for years and years and years? And no matter how hard I try, I couldn't fake it. So I'd find myself just kind of isolating myself from them. We used to have this detached garage with a workshop, and it didn't have any windows in it. And I would go down there and I would just sit down there. Sometimes I'd cry. Sometimes I would just sit down there in the dark for hours and hours. And I'm like, I'm going to go do a woodworking project. But it was just, I couldn't face the world. I couldn't face my family. That depression is so hard. And for people that don't go through it, they might not understand. So I always tell people you have to be careful what you say to someone with depression. A lot of times people will say, oh, just go for a walk it off. I get down sometimes too, but it gets so bad you can't even function. Tammy, I always show people this. These were all my medications I was on.
Oh my.
Most of these were for depression, anxiety, and then later I was diagnosed with insomnia as well. And those pills, they did almost nothing for me. But doing carnivore, it was a couple weeks into it where I was like, something's happening here. I'm starting to see this depression and the horrible anxiety I had started to lift. So it was within a couple of weeks for me that started to happen. And I just wanted to shout it from the rooftops because I suffered for so long from that. And I have family members that do as well. And I was always doing research on it. And there's over 1 billion people in the world right now suffering with mental health issues. 44% of college students experience depression. It's just going up and up and up. And these kids too, teenagers, my daughters, their peers. It's such a horrible thing. So it's like, I just want people to have this as an additional tool in their toolbox. I'm not telling anyone you do this, you do exactly what I'm telling you, but to not have this as a tool in their toolbox is, it's a tragedy.
Yes, that's for sure. And that's why I think it's useful for us to talk about it because, you know, maybe right now in your life, if you're young, you're doing all right. You're doing all right. And maybe your circadian rhythms are okay. And maybe you feel joy in your life. And so you're thinking, well, you know, I don't think I need this. But if it ever happens that you're diagnosed with something that you have to have severe medication for, or there's no medication for, you can try this. You can try this diet. And, you know, my arthritis in my knees started to loosen in 2 weeks. It took a couple of years for my knees to be good, but I could actually walk better within 2 weeks. And one of my friends, I told him to go on it. He had arthritis in his hip. He is about my age. He's about 60. 2 weeks. He started being able to sleep easier. It's 2 weeks. That's
Wow.
not very long. 2 weeks.
No. After a lifelong of suffering for many people.
Yeah.
I hear that from a lot of people. I'm so blessed now on my channel. I've been getting lots of comments from people. And that's one of the big things is I had this back pain for years and years and years. And I thought it was an injury from high school. And it was just inflammation or arthritis. And within a couple of weeks, that goes away so quickly for so many people.
I had bicep tendonitis in my left arm. I'm left-handed. So I couldn't throw a baseball overhand. I couldn't swim, front crawl. I couldn't play tennis anymore. Lots of things from the time I was 17. By the time I was in my 50s, if I tried to do back crawl, I could do that with one arm and then I could only do this with this arm. And the next year I would carnivore, fine, after 50 years of inflammation in this tendon. So it doesn't have to be an acute problem. It can be a chronic problem that you've had your whole life and you have no idea that might get better. And it might get better. There's a good chance the inflammation will leave that place too, and you'll be good to go and much more resilient and able to do the next right thing, right? That's what we're doing,
Absolutely.
the next right thing.
Yeah, that's my encouragement for people out there too, because people that hear I'm eating this way, everyone's concern is you're going to die of a heart attack. You're going to clog your arteries. When in reality, humanity should be worried about poor metabolic health and inflammation. And almost nobody is. But I interviewed a heart surgeon. He did 3,000 heart surgeries. He eats carnivore diet. And he told me you're 6 times more likely to suffer heart disease if you have poor metabolic health versus having elevated cholesterol numbers. But everyone's worried about cholesterol, and most people aren't even considering their metabolic health.
Yeah, that's right. And metabolic health now for mental illness, it looks like, and also for many of the physical ailments that we have.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I had cancer and I was already on the carnivore diet when I was diagnosed. I guess I was on the carnivore diet. I'd been on the carnivore diet for about 8 months when they first diagnosed me with a with a cancer that I should have got better from. But once they did the initial surgery, they found out that actually wasn't what I was suffering from. I was suffering from something that was supposed to have already killed me. And so they told me I had a year to live, but they took it out and it's gone, right? It's just gone. It didn't grow because carbohydrates feed cancer, not ketones.
Yes.
Not fat.
I'm so inspired by your story, Tammy, with the cancer and carnivore and everything you've done. And part of the reason is, so I'm doing this documentary on carnivore and I've been meeting a lot of people. And I met this gentleman. He's become a best friend of mine. His name is Jeff DeProsperous. And his story is very similar to yours. He was diagnosed with cancer, and then they found out, oh no, this is actually way worse cancer. And he was told, I'm sorry, Jeff, but you have stage 4 cancer. It's inoperable. It's incurable. And just like you, Tammy, he was told you have about a year left to live. And he's also Catholic, and he's also from Canada, and he's also a carnivore. He's got all the C's going. But he's been doing carnivore. He was doing the standard American diet when he found out he had cancer. And I interviewed him for our documentary because now he's carnivore and he's absolutely thriving. But when he started, he was doing more plant-based diet and standard American diet. And one of the remarkable things to me was he said, Kerry, I believe I may have caused my cancer from the foods I was eating. My body was chronically inflamed for so long, and chronic inflammation can lead to mitochondrial malfunction, can lead to cancer. But he's been doing, since he switched from standard American diet to carnivore, his chemotherapy is so much more bearable. We went to film him for about 5 days and I couldn't keep up with him. He's just full of energy. His depression, anxiety went away. His immune system is so much stronger. So it's like that alone should be helpful for that. But the thing I worry, I guess maybe I have a question for you, Tammy. The thing I worry about with Jeff is he worries so much, which is totally understandable. I can't even imagine what that would be like. But then when you worry, it releases cortisol, which turns to glucose, and there's downstream effects from glucose and cancer. I don't know how to tell. I wish he could not worry so much. I don't know if you have any advice or ideas for Jeff.
Well, being a Catholic, prayer, that's what I do. I pray. And I pray in the morning. Anything that might be bothering me, anything I may have woken up with, or maybe that was the day before something happened that's still on my mind, I take that to prayer in the morning. And I pray the rosary. And so with the rosary, you have, different mysteries that it offers you to be humble or obedient or to persevere. So, there's many different messages in the rosary. And usually if you pray the whole rosary, you'll find the things that are holding you back or holding you down or causing you to have ruminating thoughts or any of those things. You'll find those things and you can give those things up. You can ask to have those things taken up from you. And then when you start your day, you're more present. You're more present. So if there's something that happens that day, you'll be there and you'll be aware of what's going on and be able to act on it rather than to be thinking of other things that are on your mind that you might have been able to just give to God in the morning. So I give all my worries to God and I ask God to take them from me, and he does. But it takes practice. You have to actually pray every day. It's, anything you become good at, what do they say? 10,000 hours. And then then you're good at being a filmmaker or a flutist or whatever it is you want to do. 10,000 hours. It's the same with prayer. It's exactly the same thing. You pray, you do your 10,000 hours. By the time you've done your 10,000 hours, you have a personal conversation with God every day, every morning. And that doesn't come right off. You got to practice. But Catholics know the prayers. The trick is to find a time to do it. So I have a place in my house that I always go in the morning. And my husband knows that's what I do when I go there. So he doesn't feel like he needs to interrupt me for anything. He knows what I'm doing and he knows how long I'll be there. So that's something too, is the people around you then get to know that you're taking this time for yourself and that it actually helps, and they appreciate the help because then you're more present for the day and you're there for your family or your friends or whatever it is you have to do, or the difficult things that you have to do. Then you can face them. And my dad died in December. He was 92, nearly 93. So he lived a good life. He had lots of chronic illness that I think carnivore would have helped, but he was too old when I figured it out. So that didn't happen. But when he died, afterwards, my husband had to go take care of his parents and my daughter had just had a baby. And so I was by myself and I was praying and I was trying to let my grief, give this grief to God. But then I talked to my priest one day and I admitted that I'd been resentful for being alone all week. And he said, "Did you take that to prayer?" And I said, "Well, yeah, I did." But then I thought, yeah, did I really give that to God? And that night I felt much clearer. And then I received my dad's obituary and I shared it everywhere. And then I got all these beautiful messages back about my father. And I said, "Oh yeah, no, that's the way you do it. That's the way you do it. You ask God to take your pain and your trouble, and then you see what opportunity shows itself to you, and they do. And then you can move ahead in gratitude like we're supposed to. And so I would say it's prayer. It's definitely prayer for me. And I think Catholics are taught such great prayers. We have so many tools in the Catholic faith. That's what's great about the Catholic faith. There's, there's communion, and there's prayers, and then you can go in and tell the priest your sins, and that's a wonderful thing as well. So we have lots of tools in the Catholic faith, and it's best to put those into practice.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I
He
hope
has a
that's
very
helpful to him.
extensive regimen. I know prayer's a part of it, but I think a bigger part of it, it probably should be. Yeah, he's just incredible what he's been doing. We were doing this whole documentary and we were never going to have cancer in it. And then I started learning about it, and we interviewed Professor Thomas Seyfried from Boston College,
Oh yeah, yeah.
he's been talking about cancer as a metabolic disease for 30 years,
Has
and we're
he
not treating the
really?
root cause of it. Yeah.
Huh. I never heard of him before this year.
Yeah, 30 years. And I feel so bad for him because he's so passionate about it. And he's like, people just need to listen to me, just to have it as an additional tool in their toolbox. It's so sad so Jeff was diagnosed with the terminal cancer, and he was never given metabolic therapy as an option. Professor Seyfried advocates for a strict ketogenic diet, whether that's carnivore or lion diet, and fasting. Fasting's a huge part of it. So Jeff he's about to hit 50 rounds of doing a 5-day fast. He'll do carnivore diet for a week. He'll get chemotherapy in the middle of it, and then he'll fast for 5 days, just water only. And he's done that 50 times.
Wow,
And
50 times. Wow.
yeah, he is a
Wow.
warrior, and he's
He
got
is a
2 young
warrior.
boys.
Wow, that's amazing. That's really good. Fasting with chemotherapy, that's a very good idea, because it's way more trouble if you eat during chemotherapy.
Yeah, and when we filmed him, I could barely keep up with him. I'm not exaggerating. He was going to soccer practice and going to the gym, and he had a chemotherapy bag on him still from having this. He said, "Kerry, I feel like I'm 20 years old again. I feel like I could get on the soccer pitch and play soccer like I did back in his college years." So, and he just got a cancer scan back, and it was very, very positive, going in the right direction. The cancer was going down, so he's pretty excited about that.
Good, 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 good. That's really good news. Yeah, I'm sure it's a metabolic disease, as is Parkinson's.
Yes.
I know that you know someone with Parkinson's. Who's
Yes.
this person? And are they on a carnivore diet?
Her name is Mimi Morgan, and she's an absolute inspiration. There's so many of these inspiring stories. And her story, Tammy, I wouldn't believe it if I didn't actually travel down, meet her, and actually look at her medical records. She was diagnosed with Parkinson's. She had rheumatoid arthritis. She had a full-blown stroke. My stroke was a mini stroke, but she had a full-blown stroke. And then she was in the hospital for weeks with a deadly blood infection. They think it was MRSA. She was with a walker, and she could barely walk 10 steps. She found carnivore diet, and she's about to hike the St. Francis of Assisi Trail, 500 miles. From barely being able to go 10 steps. We were out there filming her in South Carolina, and she's practicing for this 500-mile hike. She's running up and down bridges, and she's lifting weights. And you used a word earlier, Tammy, and I've interviewed 26 carnivores now for our documentary, doctors and individuals. And one thing they all have in common, and I wanted to ask you about this too, because I think I know the answer, but gratitude. When I interviewed Mimi, she said, "Kerry, I wake up every morning overflowing with gratitude just to look at the sunrise in the morning." And I hear this from every carnivore I talk. I don't know if it's because we get like a second chance at life or what it is, but there's just this overwhelming gratitude, it seems like.
Well, I think part of it is that we get a second chance. Definitely, that we realize that it's necessary to have gratitude. But I don't know. I think that it clears your mind, this diet. It really clears your mind. And I think you feel the joy that God can give you. So I really, I really hope for the more people that come to carnivore, the more people will come to God. That's what I hope, because I think they'll feel the joy that God provides. And
Yes.
with depression, you don't feel that joy anymore. The inflammation cuts you off from that joy. And then when all that inflammation is gone, maybe then you're more open, and that gives you gratitude. So
Yeah. And one thing I've learned doing this as well is brain fog. I had brain fog before starting carnivore, but I didn't realize the extent of the brain fog until I got out of it. Someone said, you can't see the fog until you're out of the fog. And I believe that is so true. And that's one of the reasons, too, I'm excited for people, because it seems like most of humanity right now, I feel like when you have all that inflammation, I mean, there's science on this. It gets in the brain, your brain gets inflamed, you get brain fog. And it's almost like you're operating in a state of intoxication, like you're mildly impaired. That's how it was for me anyway. And I didn't realize how bad it was until I got out of it. And once you get out of it and you have that clarity, it's like you just want to share that with other people. I mentioned my depression earlier. I would have, like Michaela, I would have given anything. I said in my earlier video, if I had $1 billion lottery ticket, I'd rip it up to get rid of that depression. But I would have been happy to just flatline and just be normal. Like I see other people are normal and they're not hopelessly depressed, but it's completely flipped for me. I'm on the opposite end of the spectrum. I'm full of joy and gratitude, and I'm just thriving. And it's like great for you, Kerry, but I hear this from so many people that I've interviewed. The depression goes away and that they're starting to just really live. And the sad thing for me is, or maybe the happy thing is, I believe that this is just our normal state. This is what all humans would feel like if we weren't constantly inflamed since birth, eating the wrong foods that are causing inflammation and causing our bodies to be in this poor metabolic state and causing this brain fog. It's like amazing how I feel, but it's like, whoa, I would have felt this way my whole life had I been eating this way my whole life.
Yeah, and I had a pretty good diet. My mom, she didn't buy any fast food or any processed food, really. We made our own cookies. We grew our own vegetables. We bought a 4-H cow from the farmer. But that wasn't good. That wasn't good enough still for me. I had pain in my belly from the time. That's my first memories are of discomfort in my belly. So, I had irritable bowel as well. And the diet has helped with some of that, but it hasn't helped completely. We're investigating parasites now and seeing if there's any parasitic problems. These are complicated problems, right? And you uncover one magic potion and then you end up having to look for more of them. But, my family on both sides, my husband's family and my family, had a lot of autoimmune troubles. And we don't even know what autoimmune means, really. Like, what kind of a term is that? Things aren't working right. That's, something's wrong. I think that's what autoimmune. And, they have arthritis in one part of the hospital, and then they have dermatitis in another part of the hospital. And they don't know that all of these things, they could just have a ward that says inflammation and just have everybody there.
An inflammation ward. Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Right.
On the autoimmune, I wanted to just give credit we're due here real quick. So I did carnivore and I started feeling really good. I'm down over 100 pounds since my heaviest. The depression, anxiety, all of that went away, stomach issues. But the biggest blessing for me has been my daughter. And you mentioned earlier, I've got 4 girls. My wife and I have triplets plus 1.
Oh, wow.
And my oldest is 19, but my oldest really reminds me, I don't know if she reminds me, but some of the health issues that your daughter, Michaela, has had that I've learned about from watching some of her videos. My daughter, Lily, had open heart surgery at age 13. She had blood clots. She had lots of suffering throughout her entire childhood. And when she got over the open heart surgery, she had this autoimmune disorder. Now I know it was just inflammation, but it was called HS. It was a skin condition. It was horrible. It looks like acne. It was all over her chest and back, and it just was getting worse. It was incredibly painful. And my wife and I took her to all of these dermatologists all over the state of Wisconsin. We took her to 5 different dermatologists, and they were trying pills and rubs and creams. And the last one wanted to do this invasive injection, and they said it could shut down her immune system. And I'm like, this is years into it. And at one point, my daughter Lily came to me and she's like, I just want to die. This hurts so bad. And these doctors aren't figuring it out. We're going from one doctor to another. Well, long story short, when I did carnivore, I think I was maybe 8 days into it. Like I was just starting, but the snoring had stopped and I started noticing these things. And just this thing went off in my head. And I was like, Lily, we've tried everything for you. This is probably just the foods you're eating. It's like an allergic reaction. And I had watched Michaela's video. And it so reminded me all of the suffering that I've heard Michaela do through her young childhood. Lily is just like Michaela. It's kind of the same thing. So I convinced Lily. I didn't convince her. She was 18 at the time, but I'm like, you should probably try this. So she went on with me and did carnivore. And Tammy, after 8 days, this was years of suffering. After 8 days on it, half of her back had cleared up. And Lily went on to do carnivore for 30 days. All of it 100% gone, no medication. And not only that, like that was a huge blessing by itself, but she was like a different person. Her mood was elevated. Her sleep was improved. And she walked out one time into our living room, and my wife and I looked at each other and we're like, who is that person right there? It doesn't,
Oh,
she was just glowing and she had a smile on her face and just,
oh,
it was just amazing. So
that's beautiful.
I have heard, I just wanted to thank for my daughter, for everyone, the Peterson family, your husband, yourself. The video you did, I mentioned in email to you. I watched that video when it first came out where you were talking about your carnivore experience. It has inspired so many people. I have had over 80,000 comments on my YouTube channel for people doing carnivore related. And so many of them have been, I saw Dr. Jordan Peterson on Joe Rogan, and then I did watch this, or I saw Michaela. I don't know if you realize how much healing your family has inspired. It's just absolutely incredible.
That's wonderful. The more the better. That's what I think. The
Yeah.
more the better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it seems like it's spreading too, because then what happens is someone sees me doing it and then they try it and it works. So it keeps spreading. Like right now, I was just visiting yesterday. My mom and my stepdad, they just hit 1 year on carnivore.
Oh,
And
wow. How
both
wonderful.
of my sisters are as well. And then, but now like my mom, she's not quite 70 yet, but she's inspiring her peers. They're like, wait, what are you doing? Your knee pain went away and you're feeling so much better. And now her friends are starting to do it. So it really seems like it's spreading, which is wonderful.
So where do you think the inspiration came to go carnivore? Was it Michaela or, yeah?
Well, initially I watched a video by a man named Dante Ferrigno, and he
Oh, yeah.
said, I just stumbled upon him and he said, I'm going to do this lion diet for, I think he was going to do it for 30 days. And I heard that, and I had done keto before. And so I knew the science. I'm like, well, that's going to work. But then I'm thinking, you're crazy. Like, how are you going to just eat meat? That's not sustainable. That can't be good for you. And then I realized that the video I was watching was 2 years old. So he had actually done this 2 years ago. So I'm like, fast forward, let's watch his most recent video. And I looked at it and I couldn't recognize Dante. He looked like he lost all of his weight. His IBS went away. His mental health improved. He had the carnivore glow and the smile. And that's what sparked my interest. But I was still like, he's an outlier. There's no way. And then I watched Dr. Philip Ovadia, a heart surgeon. I watched Michaela. I had already seen your husband on Joe Rogan years before, but I really didn't know what carnivore was. I thought I remember the Liver King guy was out for a while. I was like, is that liver? I never really thought about it that much before. And I watched a whole bunch of Dr. Sean Baker's videos and Dr. Barry videos. And I went down a rabbit hole before I started. I had to watch a whole bunch of videos and get reassured. And then even then, I just said to myself, I'm just going to do this for 30 days. And I didn't tell myself I'm just going to eat meat for 30 days. Instead, I said, I'm just doing an elimination diet. No more sugar, no more high fructose corn syrup, no more seed oils, all of that crazy boxed garbage. I'm going to stop. Essentially, I was saying you're just going to eat meat, but rephrasing it that way made it easier for me to stomach. And then I started feeling good after doing it in just a couple of days. When 30 days came, I was in my head. I was always like, I'm going to reintroduce things and I'm going to go back to moderation afterwards. But no, I hit day 30 and I felt better than I have my entire life. The depression was going away, and I'm like, I'm gonna go to day 60, and now I'm a lifelong carnivore forever. I don't ever intend to go back.
Yeah, I have a friend. She has manic depression, pretty severely manic depressive. As far as I know, that was her major problem, and back pain, lower back pain also. So some trouble with her spine, her discs and inflammation. Anyway, she went on carnivore and she's the same age as me, and she looks 20 years younger at least now, right? Because of it. And she says, I try to go and introduce other foods. I try and I want to, but I can't do it. I feel so good that I try to introduce other things. I just can't do it. And I feel the same way. Now and then I can eat something else too, and it'll be a carbohydrate, and it just doesn't feel right. It just doesn't feel right. I don't have any depression. I have all physical ailments, so the physical ailments will come back, but now and then, I don't know, I get too hungry. If I get too hungry and there's nobody around so that I can, sneak some food or something like that. Or I'll walk down the street sometimes and I'll go into a grocery store looking for something and I'll realize, oh, I didn't eat lunch. I didn't eat lunch. I need to go home. And so that's the trick with carnivore is if you get hungry, pay attention because that's when you'll go foraging for different kinds of foods, and it'll sometimes be foods that aren't good for you. Like you said, they'll have seed oils in them or something that's pretty toxic. And so I don't know if you have that kind of struggle.
Yes, yes, I have. I'm so fortunate now because my wife, she just hit 100 days on carnivore, and my girls, the triplets, two of them are kind of ketovore, but my daughter Emma was vegan for many years. She's carnivore, so most of
Oh,
the
good.
family is now. So, but you're absolutely right. Before that, I was kind of the lone wolf. I was doing carnivore by myself, and there was lots of non-carnivore food in the house, and that would always be the problem. Is if I wasn't prepared, or I'm really busy today, and I don't because you got to cook this. A lot of the stuff we're eating it takes some preparation and a little bit of time. So, but now that the whole family's doing it, I don't struggle with it as much.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people around the holidays too. It becomes a big struggle because you're reintroduced to all of those the pies and the cookies and you're in a group of people that are all eating that sort of thing. So I did really well over Easter and Christmas because we planned ahead of time. So I think that's been a big thing that's helped me. We decided to have a big carnivore feast and I kind of looked forward to it. We did a big smoked prime rib and some other meats and things like that. So we kind of turned it into an event, but being prepared is definitely important, or having something ready to go, because yeah, that's when it gets tricky.
I watched a video of you at a picnic area, and you had invited other people who eat this carnivore diet to come and tell you their stories. I thought, wow, isn't that a lovely thing to do? What made you do that, and how did it go that day?
Yeah, well, it was amazing. It was absolutely amazing. So I'm actually in the basement right now of a movie theater. My wife and I purchased our small town movie theater a little over a year ago. And it's an old historic building, but we did a meetup. We're like, let's do a carnivore meetup at the movie theater. It's going to be completely free. And anyone that wants to learn about ketogenic diet, carnivore diet, proper human diet can come. And we actually streamed Dr. Tony Hampton on the screen so he could talk to people. But the interaction with other carnivores and individually talking to them and hearing their story was so inspiring to me. I'm like, we need to do more. So then we did another one at that park. And as we've been filming for this documentary, the big thing with our documentary is it was day 67. I decided we need a carnivore diet documentary. There's documentaries on the ketogenic diet, but I've never seen one on carnivore. And my thing was, I don't want one on the science of carnivore. I want one on these individual stories. These stories are so powerful of people healing. And that's all our documentary is. We're following people and we're just saying, look what's happening to Mimi that had Parkinson's and she went on carnivore, or Jeff or Bill in Alaska. And this is just an example, because I feel like people will either make a big change out of inspiration or desperation, but you can't just force them as much as we want to. I have so many family members. I'm like, just do this carnivore diet, and they're never going to listen unless they're inspired. So yeah, that day at that park was beautiful. So many stories of just incredible healing. And it's just so nice to be around like-minded individuals, because unfortunately still, Tammy, you and I are living in a world where it's kind of the standard American diet for the most part. You go around the grocery store or events and everyone's eating sugar, and we're kind of the weird ones out. So, and the other thing too is just the energy. I don't know if you've noticed this, but all the carnivores I talk to, it's the gratitude, it's the second chance at life, it's the energy. I don't know if it's the hormones or what, but they seem to glow and they have this energy. And when you get in a room or you're at a park with like 100 carnivores, energy is just amazing. It's so much fun. So I'm kind of hooked on them now. I'm like, any chance I can have a carnivore meetup, I'm all for it.
Oh yeah, that's a good idea. I'd like to do one of those. That's a good idea. I was at an event not long ago. It was a Catholic event and it was a women's event. And after it was over, I shook hands with 250 women. And one of them was a young woman. She came up to me and she just looked so strong. She looked so strong and she was so direct. She said, "It's very nice to meet you. I'm a carnivore. My husband's a carnivore. My children are carnivore. Thank you." And walked off. And I thought she was like a different creature. Out of all the people, I shook hands. And then this one woman came, and her energy, her strength, It was just her direction, her focus. They were all so on point compared to everybody else.
Right?
250 women. Yeah.
That's amazing. It's noticeable. Yeah.
It's noticeable.
It is. And you know what I've noticed it with, I mentioned my wife, she's 100 days on carnivore now. When my wife started too, it was so noticeable for me. Just even the first couple days, I could just see her changing and glowing and energy. And I'm like, what am I witnessing here? It's just healing. And this is the way that she probably would have always been if she was eating the proper foods. But there was one other event, Tammy, that I just recently went to. It was in Austin. It was Hack Your Health, which is a big keto conference. And we went there to film some of these good carnivore doctors. And it was such an amazing event. I got to meet Dr. Baker and interview him for our documentary. And Dr. Chafee and Dr. Kiltz and Dr. Ovadia was there. Being in the room with those individuals too, who, like Dr. Baker, who's been doing this for such a long time, such an example. We were kind of joking around at the end, and me and my friend Adam picked up Dr. Baker just for a fun photo because he's such a big muscular guy. We're like, carnivore's picking up, because I always say we have to elevate the voices of these good carnivore doctors out there, because I was inspired by Michaela's video and Dante's video, but I don't know if I would have started if not for these doctors going out on a limb. Dr. Baker's been doing it for a long time. I don't know if I would have been confident enough to start without listening to some of these good doctors. And some of them have so much great content out there. It's just free content. Like, they're not even asking you to pay for anything.
I think I'm pretty sure it was Dr. Baker that had reached out to Michaela and said, you can just live on meat. And she remembered that, when she was getting frustrated because we were down to eating really very few foods. And still things weren't turning around. We had meat, but we also had sweet potatoes, and we had salad and apples. I think we had, like, not very much, just a little bit of food, other food. And I was in England, and my knees were really bothering me. And I was supposed to go walk for 10 days with my sister in May in Croatia. And I thought, oh my goodness, I don't know how this is going to go, because I could barely even go up and down stairs anymore. Like, my knees were not in good shape. And Michaela just contacted me and she said, Mom, I gave up the last of the plants. I'm only eating meat and my arthritis is going away. And so that was enough for me. But we did hear it from a doctor, and we heard it from Sean Baker. So yes, it does make quite a difference, to have someone who's been searching for health, because doctors are searching for health. When anybody who goes to be a medical doctor doesn't think, I'm going to just try to get my patients on as many medications as possible. That's not what they think. They think, I want to bring health to these people who are suffering. That's what they want. That's what medicine is all about. And also, I think that we have held doctors in very high esteem. And these guys who are telling us to eat a proper human diet, as you say, yes, we have to hold them in high regard, because they are, in terms of the establishment, they can speak more effectively than we can, being lay people.
Yeah. I've gotten to meet so many of these good doctors too. There's one other example, Dr. Tony Hampton. This man's incredible. He told me when I interviewed him for the documentary, he said, Kerry, the first couple of years I was a doctor, he's been a doctor, a family medicine doctor for 30 years. The first couple of years, I got a handful of people off their medication. And he looked in the camera and he said, last week, I got 7 people off their medications. 2 of them were for diabetes. He said, once I found keto, carnivore, a proper human diet, and learned how healing it was, he was off to the races. And he's practicing what he preaches because he's carnivore himself. But he sees so many patients on a daily basis, and he sees them healing. Like type 2 diabetes, just if people do it, it's like almost every person that has type 2 diabetes, they're reversing it just by eating a proper human diet. He said, I was a drug dealer, and now I am a healer. And that's why I became a doctor, was to heal people. And he's truly healing people right now. So we need more Dr. Sean Bakers and Dr. Tony Hamptons in the world.
Absolutely. So how is your documentary coming along?
It's coming along very well. Thank you. Yeah. So many incredible stories. This trip out to Austin with all of the good doctors, we filmed 14 individuals and doctors while in Austin. And, every person, I go in there with an intention to film them and learn something. I got kind of an idea. They went on carnivore and they cured this horrible health condition that you'd think you wouldn't be able to reverse. But we're learning so many other things, stuff like with people having an insane amount of gratitude after doing carnivore, or just being more successful, their cognitive ability, things like that, improving after doing carnivore. Some of the stories are just unbelievable. The first person we filmed was Bill Knott. I don't know if you've seen any of those videos, but he was 700 pounds in Alaska. He hasn't left his house in 4 years. He's actually going on 5 years. Hadn't left his house in 4 or 5 years because he was too big, 700 pounds. He saw my YouTube video, one of the early ones I did, and he left me this long comment, and he said, I'm going to be dead if I don't do something. Meat in Alaska is so expensive. I'm on disability. I'm stuck in my house. Like, I want to do carnivore and I want to do a YouTube channel. Maybe I can inspire people and make some money that way. And I was like, please do it. Like, you can do all of these things. And he was the first individual we filmed for the documentary. 3 weeks later, my daughter Emma and I flew out to Alaska. And this was kind of crazy because I'm like, maybe we show up and this guy's just some fake guy on the internet. I don't know. I talked to him on the phone a couple times, and I'm taking my young daughter there to film him. But we went there and we filmed the start of his carnivore journey, and he just hit 10 and a half months. He's almost on 11 months. Next month, Emma and I are going back to film him for his 1 year update. The idea with the documentary was, let's follow some people over the course of a year doing a proper human diet and see what happens. So Bill's going to hit a year next month. And I guess just a quick spoiler alert, his depression, anxiety, the biggest thing for him, that was gone like a month or two into it. Arthritis and pain in the back. He called me up, Tammy, like 2 weeks in, he called me up so excited and confused. He's like, how is this possible? I had this lower back and knee pain for years and it's gone, like 2-3 weeks into carnivore. And I said, inflammation, Bill, your inflammation goes away so quickly. So he was so happy about that. But I guess quick spoiler alert, just about a month ago, he stepped outside for the first time in almost 5 years.
Wow. 11 months. It took him 11 months to get outside.
Yeah. 700 pounds. He's down over 250 pounds in 11 months.
Oh, wow.
But when we were there, 700 pounds is obviously very big, but he was almost immobile. So he has it's a little room. It's about the size of a 10 by 10 room that he lives in. That's his house. And he has a toilet like 6 feet from his bed. He could barely walk to the toilet, and he was crouched over like this. He had to have his hands on his knees. He could not stand up straight. And he just did a video walking across his driveway, fully upright walking. I am so excited for him because my daughter Emma and I are going to go and we're going to see. When we left him, he was crouched over and couldn't barely walk. And now we're going to see him 250 pounds lighter, standing upright. And he went on, I helped put together a GoFundMe so he could afford meat in Alaska. It's very expensive there. And the carnivore community is amazing. Everyone got behind it and donated. He was able to buy enough meat to last him this whole carnivore journey. And, but he started his own YouTube channel. And he's inspiring so many people because they're like, Bill, if you can do this in Alaska at 700 pounds, I can do this. And his YouTube channel is taking off. He's no longer on disability. He's actually supporting himself. He's making an income while he was still stuck in his house too. It's so amazing. He's a very godly man. He's got a huge heart. Everyone loves him. And, I can't wait to go back there next month with my daughter and see him again.
I bet. I'll pray for him. Bill. What's his last name?
Thank you. Knott. N-O-T-T.
Bill Knott. I'll have to look him up too. Oh, yeah. That's really inspiring. That's so good. I used to, when I was, before I knew about this diet and when I was younger, you look at people who are obese and you wonder what it is that they're doing different in their lives than that you're doing, because you're not obese. Well, now I look at people who are obese and I think, oh, that's not your fault. Carbohydrates are inflammatory. You're not fat, you're inflamed. That's what you are. You have an inflammatory condition that can be reversed, but you have to stop eating carbohydrates to do it. But hey, It's an adventure. That's what I always say. It's an adventure.
Yes, I totally agree with you. And it makes me so sad because I've seen this over the years. You probably have too. You'll see it on the news or certain people that are cynical that say that person should just stop eating as much and exercise. That's what they need to do. That is so untrue. We're living in a society where from birth, we're given highly addictive food. There's food scientists out there that make this food as addictive as possible. It's an addiction. Sugar's a highly addictive drug. I think it just gets a pass. It's been normalized, but they say it lights up the brain on an MRI like cocaine. They've done studies with mice, and the mice actually prefer the sugar over the cocaine. That's how addictive this stuff is. So I always tell people the big thing that happened for me on carnivore, because I yo-yo dieted on keto, was on carnivore, I admitted I'm addicted to sugar. I'm addicted to the standard American diet, and I cannot moderate an addiction. And that's why I had success on keto, but I failed because I would always lose some weight, and then I would try to moderate the carbs and the sugar, and I could never do it. So I always tell people you shouldn't be ashamed of saying I'm addicted to sugar and carb. Most of humanity is. It's designed to be that way. We were brought up that way, sadly, since birth. I mean, I'm not shaming anyone. I did it with my kids. My parents did it with me. Started out at sugar from a young age. So it's kind of like a lifelong thing that, of course, it's not your fault. And the other thing that gets me too is people say, oh, you just need to move more or exercise or eat less. The exercise thing when you're overweight, I believe exercise is very important, but I didn't lose any of my weight from exercising. It was all nutrition. And like you said, I was inflamed and sick, and asking an inflamed and sick person to go out and jog and run, it's like they have pneumonia or something. They're sick. How are they going to exercise and run? Once I started losing the weight and the inflammation and getting healthier, I actually wanted to exercise. I had excess energy. I was just like full of energy and wanted to do it, but it wasn't. There's so many things that we're told, that I was told actually through my life, that were just incorrect. Like, if you want to lose that weight, you got to go jog or exercise. It wasn't exercise for me. And it wasn't being overweight that made me stop snoring. It was inflammation that made me stop snoring. Lots of things that were backwards.
What do you do at your theater? What kind of movies do you show?
Yeah.
Is it open 7 days a week? Like
in summertime, we just opened up for summer, and we're open 5 days a week, except for Monday or Tuesday. All throughout winter, we're just open Friday, Saturday, Sunday. We show regular new movies that come out, and then around the holidays, we'll do throwback older movies. It's been a huge blessing. My girls are the triplets. They're going to be 17 in a couple days, which I can't believe how fast it went. And when we were deciding to do this movie theater, that was a big reason. It was like, we could do this with the girls. We're going to make some fun memories. So the girls work at the little concession stand. People say, oh, you own a movie theater. And I'm like, it's a single screen historic theater. So it's a really small kind of quaint movie theater, but it dates back to 1860. Before Lincoln was president, this building was here. So there's lots of history. And I'm kind of a history geek. So we do history tours and special events and birthday parties and things like that. So it's been amazing.
That's really nice. When I was, 13, I think I cleaned the theater. We had a theater. It was a one-screen theater in my little town. And when I got old enough, I got to sell popcorn. And I don't even think I got to the selling tickets. I don't think I did, because then I became a lifeguard. But that was a really good way to go from my paper route that I had to working in somewhere. Cleaning theaters was great. That was great. I got to turn the music on and clean the theater.
Yes, that's exactly what we do. The girls love doing that. Crank the music and clean it up. There's certain movies too, are going to be a lot more work cleaning, like the kids' movies. There's usually just popcorn everywhere, all over the floor. But
I could always tell which of my friends' parents were out of town, because they would have thrown up because they were drinking usually.
Yeah.
In the 70s.
Awesome.
In the wild 70s. Yeah.
We find all sorts of stuff too when we clean up, little bottles and like food we don't sell and stuff like that. But we sell proper human foods at the movie theater too. And a lot of people have been taking it up. So we have it's hard because there's not a lot of good carnivore snacks, but we have grass-fed beef sticks, hard-boiled eggs. We had cheese for a while, and we have pork rinds. So we have the options, because that's been one thing that's, ethically or whatever, it weighs on my heart, is still selling the popcorn and the food. The realization I finally come to is I hope people just learn off of my example. I don't eat any of that other food, and I don't advocate for it. We offer the option. But I'm like, if we stop selling that food, people would go to the other movie theater and buy it, and it wouldn't fix the problem. So I'm hoping it's got to be in the same way that I don't blame the grocery stores for selling the food. It's got to be the individual's decision. So it's something I still struggle with, as you can tell, when kids come in and buy that stuff. But thankfully, a lot of people have been buying the carnivore options, and so many people have been coming into the theater, and they take me off to the side and they're like, I've been watching your YouTube videos. I'm carnivore too. And I'm like, say it louder. Let's go. Let's celebrate this. So
yeah, isn't that nice when people come up to you and say, oh, thank you. My life is better. That's great. Yeah, that's great. It's all about love thy neighbor, right? It's giving help offering a better way and then having people respond and tell you that they actually have found a better way. There's nothing better than that.
Absolutely. Yeah, I a check for $1 billion, I'd rip it up. I get emails or messages or comments from people that say my video inspired them in some way, or it was one of many videos that inspired them, and it's changed their life forever. I'm getting all sorts of people too, folks in their 60s, 70s, 80s, just thriving on carnivore as well. And when I get those messages, like someone that's worked their whole life and they've maybe suffered their whole life and now they're in their 60s or 70s or even 80s and their inflammation's going away and their mobility's coming back and they've got that joy. It's so rewarding. It's honestly, it's the reason I'm kind of two reasons I'm doing the documentary is because of that. And also just the mental health depression aspect. There's so many people suffering in the world right now from that, younger and younger. And I would have given anything in the depths of my depression just to have this as an additional tool in the toolbox. And I was clueless. I was just going down the cascade of pills and medication. I had no idea this was an option. I just think of all the people right now in the world that are suffering at this very moment that they don't know this is an option. And that's what keeps me going and making me want to do this documentary. The big part of the documentary is going to be on mental health.
Do you know Dr. Chris Palmer at McLean Hospital?
Yes, he's fantastic, right? He wrote the book Brain Energy, which is amazing. I'm hoping that I can potentially get him on as an expert in our documentary. Besides him, there's another Dr. Georgia Eid. I don't know if you're familiar with her. She's a Harvard-trained psychiatrist. She recently, actually, I have it right here. She recently put this book out. It's called Change Your Diet, Change Your Mind, Georgia Eid. And it's all about ketogenic carnivore diet. And she's studied this for a long time, but Dr. Chris Palmer is amazing. I absolutely love what he's doing. I told Dr. Eid, I just wish I would have found this like 20 years ago. It would have changed my life forever. But I'm so happy it's out there now. And there's a lot of people talking about nutrition and mental health. Smart people. Like she's a Harvard-trained psychiatrist, Dr. Chris Palmer. It's a really growing field. So it's amazing to see that.
Yeah, that's for sure. You know, when I look through YouTube, I do follow people who have changed their diet, but my feed is getting full of people talking about it. And it never used to be like that. It only used to be a few. And so it's growing. I think it is growing for sure. But like you said, we're probably still outliers. It's hard for me to believe. I've been doing this for over 7 years. So it's been a long time already. And I went into the grocery store the other day with a friend. I hadn't been in a grocery store for, I don't know when the last time I was in a grocery store, because I just go to the butcher. And so, yeah, grocery store, it's so full of things you don't need. It's so full of things you don't need. So when people say it's expensive to go on carnivore, well, yeah, it's expensive, except for you don't have to buy anything in the middle of the store. All you have to do is go around the outside of the store and you're done.
So true. When I go to the grocery store now too, I just think back to when I used to be there filling that cart up with all of that boxed and processed stuff, and not like I was wasting an incredible amount of money buying food that was not nutritious for me. And I was wasting an incredible amount of time. And then to think of the toll that took on my digestive system, it takes a lot of energy to process all of that essential waste food that our body doesn't need. It's just waste. All of that toll. And for years and years. And then I used to wonder, why am I so fatigued and tired all the time? And when you would eat that food too, you'd be hungry again an hour later, 2 hours later. When I eat carnivore, I'm full. I'm good. I sometimes eat 1 meal, 2 meals a day, and I'm good. Yeah, the argument that carnivore is too expensive, I get it, but I think a lot of people are coming at it from the standard American diet where you're eating 3 meals a day with snacks in between and desserts and sauces and spices. And I'm like, I don't have any of those on carnivore. It's actually a lot less expensive for me, and I'm getting better quality meat. There's not all that. There's no snacking. There's no spices. There's no sauces, none of that stuff. And then the other thing that I really realized after was the expense for all of this. These were all my pills. I'm on no pills right now. I'm on no medication. I was going to the doctor every month, every couple of weeks. Like I was going over and over again and co-pays and all of that time and expense. And it's so much less expensive. And you know, the other thing, Tammy, I don't know if you've noticed this, but every carnivore I've interviewed, besides the gratitude comment, they all seem to be so much more successful on carnivore. I want to be careful because I'm trying not to overhype it, but this is the truth. This is what I've heard from people. We interviewed a pastor of a church. He's been carnivore for a year along with his wife. He said, our congregation has doubled in size in the 1 year we've been doing carnivore. They've been doing this for like 20 years.
Oh,
And
wow.
everyone I talk to, they say the same thing, that whatever their success metric is, their cognitive ability, their decision making, their energy, whatever reason it is, they're so much more successful when they do it.
Isn't that interesting? Yeah, I do think that, because the attendance to church has gone down so much. I wonder how much of that has to do with brain fog, and
Yeah.
that people can't, and that people can't feel the joy. I really wonder if that is so. People listening to this, my husband's coming. People listening to this can realize that not only will your health get better, but your intentions and your attitude will change as well. And
Yes.
I know that your depression will lift, but it's deeper than that. It's deeper. I think that it goes right down to having a feeling for what's the essence of life. You can get in touch with the essence of life, I think, because there's no inflammation that's clouding the way. It kind of looks like that, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah. On the church front too, one thing that I realized was one of the 10 commandments is thou shalt have no other gods before me. Don't idolize things. My whole life before this, sadly, I was idolizing food. It was always food. What are we going to eat? What's next? What's the next meal? And I just think now, what if I had that same reverence, that same attention, that same energy towards God as I should have been? And now it's freed up to do that afterwards. So there's definitely something there.
Uh-huh. Yeah, well, thank God for that. That's for sure. That's what I
Yeah.
think. Yeah. Well, I think this was inspired. All of what's going on now, it's necessary because people are very misguided now. There's a lot of young people who feel frustrated with their dreams and their plans. They don't feel fulfillment, and it has to start with yourself, right? It has to start with ourselves, that we make changes within ourselves. It's not so much the outside world, it's really what we're doing from inside. That's something too that I hope people can hear, because what can I do? What can I do to help myself become more grateful, to to forgive in the past everything that's happened? How can I forgive? Let's work on that. Let's choose one of those things. Forgiveness is a big one, right? Gratitude and forgiveness. If you could get gratitude and forgiveness going on in your life every day, then you have space in your life. Then you have space. You're not being held down by these attitudes that are blocking you from everything else that you have to do. I think this carnivore diet and faith, they're somehow related. What we put into our bodies, they're somehow related. I guess we'll see over time just exactly how
Right.
that is. I know my priest, he's a ketogenic. He has a ketogenic diet.
That's wonderful.
He wants to feel good. He doesn't want to suffer. And most people who are 40, they start to feel the things that they are suffering from. People don't get much past 40 before they start to feel those things. And so if everybody knows about this, then they can change.
That's our documentary. The name is Healing Humanity, The Power of a Proper Human Diet, which is kind of a big name. Well, how are you going to heal humanity? But there's several plays on words there. But the main takeaway that we've had from this is, how do you heal humanity? It's such a big ask. It's really not. It's just you as an individual, each person just has to heal themselves. You do that, you inspire other people, and it'll spread and it'll change. And that's my big advice, is just focus. That's the advice I give my children as well. There's so much going on in the world. There's so many distractions. There's political causes. There's news. There's social media. But I'm like, just focus on being the best person you can be, the best human you can be. Everything else will fall into place. Those other things will worry about themselves. But if you're the best person you can be, that's the way to go.
Yeah, Jordan talks about subsidiarity. So you take care of the problems that are at your level of analysis. You don't have to think up so high and think, well, I have to fix the problems up there. No, fix the problems around you, in your family, in your community. When you think you have all of that solved, that's when you go up to the next level. But not until all
Right.
of that is solved, right? That means that maybe the communities can form together again, because we've lost communities. People have been spread out far and wide, and that's, I think, caused a lot of isolation as well. And
Yes.
that's not good. And the pandemic too, it caused more isolation. And so But like you said, when you're 700 pounds and you can't get out of your house, or you're depressed and anxious, and you feel like you don't want to talk to people because you're you you wonder if your attitude is going to be correct, and so everybody's divided. You eat this diet, all those problems can lift. Then you can reach out to other people, and we can form communities again and prosper. That's a
Yeah,
dream.
absolutely.
That's a dream, isn't it? That's a
It
good
sure
dream.
is. Yeah, it's an important one too. The documentary, like I had so many reasons for it, but the big one now is when I see my children and their peers. Because like you said earlier, you ate pretty good and you still had these issues. I ate pretty good later in my adult life. I ate kind of bad, more fast food, junk food. This next generation, like my kids, oh my goodness, the stuff they're eating and consuming. Like I look at it like this. I was eating processed foods and they're eating ultra processed foods. You see
Right.
like friends of my girls, they go to get the big coffee and it's just like all sugar, liquid sugar and ultra processed packaged foods. It's rampant now, and I'm really worried sort of for that next generation, because then all the downstream things that happen because of it with mental health issues and so on.
Yeah, well, I'm hoping also that young women especially, are learning that the feminist narrative wasn't a helpful narrative, that it has turned us away from family and away from marriage. That's not helpful. That's away
Yeah.
from community. That's away from your neighbor. That those are the people you need to be taking care of and watching over. And we've left everybody to become isolated. And so, yeah, there's a lot of healing that has to go on in the world. But I think they can offer us all this ultra processed food, and then we're too foggy to notice, right? So, it's not just when you change your diet, it's not just for you. It is for you in the beginning. It's your responsibility, but it's actually for the world that you're changing.
Absolutely. That has been the big epiphany for me doing this too. I see all of these people healing, but every one of them, like Jeff DeProsperous I mentioned, this guy's going through stage 4 terminal cancer right now. Was told he had a year to live. By the way, he's going on year 3 now. He's thriving, but he should be focused on himself, and he's not. He's got a YouTube channel and he's out there screaming, shouting, like, I want people to hear this story because there's other people out there that were suffering needlessly that don't need to be. I hear that over and over again from people. It's like once you have this healing, you want it for other people. It's contagious in a good way.
Yes, it is, isn't it? Yeah. And so making a documentary, I think that's wonderful. So are people going to be able to watch it?
Yeah, that's the question I keep getting. We're hoping for the summer of next year. It's tricky because we're going to follow some of these individuals over the course of a year. And so Bill Knott hasn't even hit a year yet. So that really adds to it. We're so close now, but there's a couple other stories we really want to get in there. The initial goal was we had all of these outlined, like heart disease, obesity, type 2 diabetes, autoimmune disorders, aging is a big one. And then fertility and women's health is another big one. So we're still trying to fill in a few of those, in particular type 2 diabetes and fertility and women's health. There's
Let's
so
talk
many
about
stories out
fertility
there,
and
but
women's health for a second. What kind of stories do you have on fertility and women's health?
so I interviewed Dr. Robert Kiltz. He's a fertility expert. I think he has like 600 employees and clinics all over. He eats carnivore. He's been doing it for 11 years. And his biggest advice is, it's kind of grim out there in terms of fertility rates in the world. Sperm counts amongst men are lower than they've ever been. Fertility issues are just through the roof. And it's all just the foods we're eating. It's nutrition. So that's what he's advocating for. And we've got a couple preliminary stories, but that's an area we haven't filmed in yet. So if anyone's watching and they've overcome fertility issues on a proper human diet, we're looking for some more stories to share in that regard. But what Dr. Kiltz has shared with us, absolutely amazing. He does a live stream. He gets up, he's a machine. He's like, that's the other thing with these carnivore doctors I've been meeting, like Dr. Baker and Chafee. They're like next level. Dr. Kiltz gets up at 3 a.m. and he does a live stream. I can't tell you how many times I have seen comments on that live stream of young couples that were trying to start a family and they couldn't until they found Dr. Kiltz and they took his advice. And now there's little beautiful babies and children and families around the world from that advice. And it was all just nutrition. Hormones are dysregulated. They're unbalanced when we're eating the wrong foods and not the right foods. And he's seen it over and over again more than anybody. He was one of the more incredible interviews we've had out of everyone for this documentary, especially too because he's a fertility doctor. He's been doing it for 30 years, but I first interviewed him as an individual. I said, Dr. Kiltz, I just want to know your individual carnivore story and how has this impacted you? And his story alone was so touching. And then he has all this professional experience in the fertility world as well.
Is he in Syracuse? Fertility
Yes.
physician. Oh, yeah. Dr. Robert Kiltz.
Yes. Syracuse. And I think he's got an office in Florida as well.
Okay. Well, that's good to know, because if people need to watch somebody that can tell them how to have a baby, that's important these days. People aren't as successful with their babies now. They're losing babies, and it's not good.
Yeah.
Well,
unfortunately, that is something I've learned from each of these experts. We have an expert kind of in every field, like type 2 diabetes. Dismal are the words I'm hearing. It's horrible what's going on out there. The rates are higher, younger and younger people. The fertility specialist, he used the word dismal. The heart surgeon that I interviewed, and the other common theme that all of them talk about so passionately, other than just eat carnivore, is you got to fix your metabolic health. Type 2 diabetes, they talk about metabolic health. Heart disease, metabolic health. Next week, I'm going to interview in Illinois for the documentary Dr. Philip Ovadia. One really crazy thing I don't think I mentioned, Tammy, with me was I had the congestive heart failure. I was also born with the irregular heartbeat, highly erratic heartbeat since birth. Well, a couple of months ago, I went in to get this tested because I'm like, I feel like I could run a marathon right now. I'm not dizzy or fatigued anymore. Let's get this checked out. It was the first time I went for a doctor's appointment where I had nothing wrong with me. I just wanted to verify these things. And they did a heart echo, and my congestive heart failure, it was a 44 ejection fraction before. This is all in my medical records. It's perfectly normal now. It's normalized. And I was told this was a chronic thing that would just get worse. And crazier than that, I'm so thankful that that's happened. My irregular heartbeat since birth is normal. It's completely normal. For 42 years, it was highly erratic. Every doctor's appointment I would go to, they take your blood pressure, check your heart rate. They'd always say, do you know you got an irregular heartbeat? And I'm like, yeah, you guys tell me that every time. It's in all of my notes and everything, but it's completely normal now. It's unbelievable. I'm looking forward to talking to this heart specialist a little bit more about it. But so many people have come out of the woodwork. I announced that on a YouTube video just briefly that have said the same thing. It's uncharted territory, right? Because most people diagnosed with congestive heart failure aren't going to go and eat only meat. But I've had so many comments on my channel that said they did the same thing, reversing congestive heart failure or irregular heartbeat. So going to investigate that one some more.
It's like magic. It's amazing.
Yeah. I can't even wrap my brain. Like, why would my heart stop since birth? It just beats normal. But they say the heart and the brain are both much more efficient while in a state of ketosis.
Yes, that's
you can burn sugar for fuel or you can burn fat. And they said that for a very long time. So I guess it makes sense from that perspective.
Well, that's very cool. I think I've taken enough of your time. It was very good of you to come on my podcast and talk with me. I'm very interested in your projects. I'll follow you, and we'll put, you can talk to Ian, make sure that all your links are below when people look. And I'm looking forward to the comments that people leave.
Well, I want to thank you so much. And if I could, I just want to plant a little seed, no pressure, but just something to think about. I would absolutely love to interview you for the documentary. If you're ever interested, would be a huge honor. So maybe something to think about. I don't want to put you on the spot, but
definitely it's a worthwhile project. So I'll keep that in mind for sure.
Thank you so much for everything. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure.